Hey, y'all, this is the second live. Excuse the technical difficulties we just had there. Sorry, I had to do the reset. Anyway, so this is the second live on how we're going to do these Pangea cage build outs. This is the smaller one, the larger one's over here. So first I'm going to show you the larger one and what we're going to do in that, and then I'm going to show you the smaller one, okay? Some of the feedback I got on the first video I did was, hey, I really like that you showed the whole thing. I really like that you answered questions throughout. But if I just want to see the steps without having to watch you go through the process, like from A to B to C without watching you build it out, what would I do? So I'm going to do this video a little bit differently. So first, I'm going to put this smaller cage aside. And then I'm going to show you what we're doing in the larger cage. Now, this one's going to be a little bit shorter because this step is a little bit shorter. That's just the way it plays out. So I'm going to slide you back a little bit. And I am going to turn this cage on its side to show you the work that I did during the last live stream. So we did the grates. We built the cage out. We did the great stuff. I took the doors off. We did the great stuff. Here you can see how that looks. You can see I went right up to the screen there. I have a little bit of a gap that I'm going to fill with some silicone just so crickets won't be able to get in there when we do that. And then along the bottom, you can see I'm right at the bottom. There's about a ½ inch down there where there's not great stuff. And that will be covered by the substrate because I'm not doing bioactive in this one, so I don't need a drainage layer. So you can see now that the great stuff is, what's up, Zealous? Great stuff is dry. You can also see there's some texture to it. A lot of people at this point, they'll cut down the bumps and knobs. I personally don't like doing that because there's no point in doing great stuff if you smooth it out. Doing any of your spray foam gives you those bumps and knobs so the background doesn't look as smooth. So then if you cut it down to look smooth, you might as well have just done your silicone and your bedding on the background without taking the time to do your spray foam. I will go through, there's a couple spots that I'm going to show you. There are a couple things that you do want to watch out for. So right here, I don't know if you can see, I can slide my finger in a little gap. I'm going to make sure I fill that with silicone because again, you'd have crickets in there, but your other bumps and curbs and stuff like that, that's part of the design. I also personally, when I build mine out, I like to put little bumps towards the top. So that way, if the gecko wants to be on the back and stand, they'll be right underneath your UV. I'm still going to put branches across when I build this out, but I like there being a permanent spot where they have a surface where they can bask and get right underneath. Did I get a DM? I did not, but my messages have been crazy. So no offense to you, I just haven't really checked them. So I will check after this. So this one, we're going to do the same thing we did last time. We're going to put the spray foam down. What I have to be careful for on this side is I have to make sure I don't get into the screws for the door, which are the back of the hinges right here. And I want to make sure I don't hit the screen up there. So I'm going to protect the screen again with foam. Bum, bum, bum. I saved that piece of foam, and then the ADHD made me not remember where I put it. Got it. So we're going to put the foam along the screen to make sure it doesn't connect there. I got to measure it, and then we're going to cut it down. And then Christian sent you. Wonderful. I think he'll be with us momentarily. And then when I go along the front, I'm going to make sure that I don't hit those hinges because if I ever need to take the door off this thing, it'll be impossible if I cover those hinges up. So like I said, I used one piece from the packing. Hey, Christian, good to see you. I used one piece from the packing because I reuse a lot of this stuff. I just had to score it so I knew where I was going. I've got that wedged in there very loosely, but that way, if the spray foam goes to hit the screen, it will protect it. What would be the issue if I did get it on the screen? There wouldn't be any issue for the enclosure. One, I like there to be a little bit of gap just because of heat. And if I get it on the screen and I ever want to take this apart, then I'm going to pull the foam apart. So I've got that there. There's no, like, this has a good depth to it between the back of the cage and where these screws are. So I'm not too worried there. So I'm going to grab the can of foam, which is right here. Remember I said to always make sure that you're doing a whole can's worth because they don't really reuse. That's why I build multiple cages together. Another thing I want to show you is this. So I actually made a little piece out of a can I was using for a different repair, then cut it so I could show you this. So this is what it looks like on the back of the enclosure. This is going to be the texture. This is going to be how it looks. But then I cut it. And I don't know if you can see the darker texture in the middle. That's because it's not fully dry yet. So let's say you make a mistake and you do need to cut something back. You can cut it back, but it's not going to be dry on the inside necessarily. So you have to plan on, okay, if I'm cutting back, I won't be able to do the next step at the, like, it's going to delay you a little bit, which is fine. Just know and plan on it. Now this, I let sit for about 24 hours. And again, you can see the darker in the middle. I'm hoping that's showing on the camera. Normally when you cut it back, if you cut something back, it takes about 7 or 8 hours for the surface you're seeing to then dry enough that you could put your silicone on it. So blacksmith, I am keeping it off of it just so in case I need to take the screen off. Now I'm gluing the sides to each other, so taking this cage apart won't really work, like taking the walls off of it, but I do want to be able to take the top off, because if I want to get an absolutely huge piece of terrain in here, like a large piece of driftwood or cork bark or whatever, and I'm worried about getting it past the door or anything like that, you can work in it that way. It's just, I always like to have the option just in case. Well, thank you, Super. Appreciate you and appreciate Christian. So I'm going to put this here so you can see how I'm working. Now, because what I'm about to do in this video is a very short step, I did the second step, or I did the next step, excuse me, in the smaller enclosure already, so you'll be able to see that, because this is only going to be 20 minutes. This is not going to be long. So again, you're going to get situated here. You got your spray foam. Go near the edge, leave a little bit of gap, because remember, you gotta make sure you're budgeting on it expanding. I give lines close to each other. I do my lines close to each other, but I don't necessarily do them touching. That gap there will get filled in as it expands. I'm going to go along here and set my edge for the door. That way my edge for the door is set. That is it. Can is done. See, this step is not long at all because you can only spray it and then let it sit. So now this, excuse me one sec. The back is totally dry. The back is set. Now we're going to let this dry overnight. That's all we can do at this step is just let this dry until tomorrow. Now, like I said, I prepped the step in the smaller enclosure to show you so you would see what's coming next. Now give me 1 second. So here is that 4 wide enclosure. What you do on the dried foam is you cover it in an aquarium safe silicone. You use something that can handle water, can handle temperature, stuff like that. I always use a black aquarium silicone, so if anything shows through, you'll see it. Now what you're going to do is, let me tilt this. I don't know if you can see how you can see the bedding on the foam, but you can't see the foam anymore. So what you do is you cover it with silicone, and then you spread it out to make sure there's no gaps, and then you put the bedding you're going to use on it on the background. Now, if I did this step right, when I lift it, you're going to see that the bedding is still the background. Let me turn this so you can see it in the light. The bedding is still covered in the background. There's no gaps. You're going to get little clumps that stick to the back like this. It's no problem at all. Now, I normally sit this upright and just kind of lightly tap it off, or you can use a brush like from a little broom. Where's mine? Because I have one that I actually use for stuff like this. I take a little broom and just brush it just to see if there's any excess on there that I want to bump off now. And that also lets me know if I have any gaps. So looking in here, I'll shine a light in here. Let me turn the camera on this so you should be able to see inside nice and easy. There's no gaps on the background. I don't see any spots that I missed, but you can see I left the texture from the great stuff, so that's going to leave the texture in that background, and it's going to be more natural looking. And again, you don't want to scrape the bejeebus out of this. You just want to brush it off. I did this last night when I had to skip the live stream. So, but you can see you got nice texture. It's solidified on there. I could go harder. I just don't want to, because I want it, like I want to keep as much on there as possible. Your animals running on this are going to knock a little bit off. But again, you get a nice look like this. I'm going to take the bedding that's on the bottom, and I'm going to use that same bedding in the background of the large one, just in case there's any little bits of silicone in here, but there shouldn't be. So you get a nice build out like this. And then you are good to go. Now this enclosure, the small one, I'm only doing the back. Since the depth of this enclosure is not, or excuse me, the width of this enclosure is not particularly large, I didn't want to do anything to take away from that. I didn't want to reduce the width for the animal. The depth, I was willing to lose ½ an inch or so, but I didn't want to reduce the width. So what I'm going to do now is, now that that's all pulled, I'm going to put the door back on this because I will be less likely to break the door. Actually, I lied to you. I'm going to shake this bedding out, and then I'm going to put the door on. Bam, 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 bam. And then we're actually going to do the next step of this. So the way I'm going to do this video, like the video for the larger one, I'm going to get the silicone on there and the bedding on there off screen. And then we're going to do the build out of the large one. We're going to do the build out of the small one today. All right. So I got the bedding in there. I'm going to wipe the sides off because they got bedding all over them. I'm going to get some fresh substrate to put in here. Like I said, the bedding that I used where I put the silicone down and then put the bedding on it, I will show when the build out of the other one, I'll show one side. I didn't want to waste y'all's time watching a video where I do 3 sides. So, but I put that in a Rubbermaid right there that I'll reuse again, just in case there's any silicone left in it. I am always paranoid that I'll leave something with silicone, then a feeder bug will eat that and then the gecko will eat it. It's not really likely, but I'm paranoid of stuff like that. So let me grab some bedding. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put bedding in here up to the bottom of that expanding insulation. The reason I take the door off, let me put a light on top of here so you guys will be able to see the work I'm doing. This substrate that I'm using does have a bit of moisture in it already. That's going to go right up to the bottom of that insulation foam. Now we're going to get, I wonder if I have a different light that'll show me more. You all are seeing this build is exactly as it happens with ADHD brain. This may be too bright, but we're going to see. Where's the switch on this one? Does that tell you how long it's been since I used this? There it is. Too bright? There we go. That's what we're looking for, baby. So now we're going to determine what we're going to put in here for the build out. But you see what I mean? How you see all the texture of the insulation because you didn't wipe it away? When you trim off from the insulation, by the way, I always save those bits. I save the little bits that wind up looking like this. I only save them for one project. I am not such a frugal reptile keeper that I'll save these forever. But what I do is I save them in case like the insulation I sprayed over there has some gaps in it. I will stick these on with some silicone and fill the gaps. I also use these along the top where I put the pad to keep it off the screen. I'll put these to put the foam right at the top without it actually getting into the screen. So that's why I always save these with things that I cut off. So now we've got our substrate in here. I'm going to add a little bit more. Now I'm probably going to get this enclosure set up and situated and going for a couple weeks before an animal goes in it. So I will probably, what I plan on doing is getting some pothos or snake plant or something in here that will thrive no matter what bedding it's in. And this is why I took the door off. So if I'm putting any sort of cork bark or anything in here, it's not going to have any, like I'm not going to have any chance of breaking the door. Let me grab a couple pieces of cork and we'll do our build. So I grabbed a couple larger pieces of cork, and I also grabbed one of Pangea's bendable vines. These things are pretty long. One end is clearly like the front because it's got these smaller pieces, and one end is the bottom. But what I like about this stuff is it's got a wire inside it, so when you bend it, it holds shape. but I always put these in last after I've done my cork bark. Super, that's cool. I hope that this build helps you with your build. And if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I'm absolutely happy to answer them. So I'm going to start with a cage this size. I'm going to start with 2 larger pieces of cork. And with the door off, again, I don't have to worry about breaking anything. This is where this is another reason I keep the top where I can remove it, as the question was earlier. So if I've got a piece that's really wide that I want to wedge in, it will work. So I'm going to put this along right here. I'm going to take this piece and put it in here. I'll show you why I'm doing it this way in a sec. Doesn't matter which is up and which is down for what my goal is. All right, so here's what I'm looking for. One, when you have them angled and curved, it adds a lot of depth, because you will be much happier with your enclosures if they look interesting. The animal's not going to care. The animal's only going to care if the enclosure feels safe, like temperature's right, hiding spots are right, but you're going to be happier if your build looks in a way that's aesthetically pleasing. And adding depth and adding like layers to it really makes you enjoy your enclosures way more. So I put this piece in angled to the back. I put this piece in curved through here. Now, the reason I built it that way is this. Let me grab a tool that I can poke into the enclosures with. So I've got my hemostats right here. One, there's all this space back here. There's tons of space back there. And I will put some extra soil back there, and I may put a plant back there, but I'm definitely going to put some extra soil back there. And then that curved piece, there's a hole down in here where it is the curve of the cork against the solid side. That's going to give a nice crevice for any of your hiding geckos to get into, because on one side they're going to have the solid side, like the solid black, and then they're going to have the cork curve, and they're going to get that nice crevice that lots of geckos hide in during the day. So like your toe case, your crested geckos, anything in genus gecko, really, a lot of things hide in crevices, and this will really help them. Now, we could put some smaller pieces of cork in here, but I think it's going to be too busy if we do that. If you don't want to put plants in it, I will probably put some either real or fake plants. You could take thinner cork rounds like this and put them right back in there. And one, like this, I always do my builds like this because something you really need to consider is your surface area. There's a movement in the reptile industry right now to have bigger enclosures, and bigger is often better, but not always better. If you have a bigger enclosure, but the same amount of terrain, you're not actually going to give that animal what they need to feel safe. So like I said, I would do either a real plant or a fake plant in here. I'm going to do fake for this one. If you were going to do a real one, the way I set this up, I would put the I would put the pot behind the cork here in there, so you could leave it potted. If you need to move cork and take it out because the plant dies or you need to adjust things, you can pop it right out and it's not in the substrate. That's a good way to do potted plants without doing bioactive, and you can just swap them out. And then when I put the UVB light across the back, the light will get right on the plant. So now I'm going to take my Pangea vine. Now I know how big this cage is, so I'm going to straighten out the back, and then I'm going to V it. And I'm actually going to V this back and forth a little bit, and when I put it in, you'll see why. So I'm going to take that first V and put it over into the background. And then I'm going to take the second V, and I'm going to push it into the gap over here and get it nice and wedged behind the cork. So again, I'm adding depth with my products. I'm adding depth with the terrain in the enclosure. And now this piece, I'm going to bend tight in here. So these fronds stick up and go right near the light. Now I got this one that's sticking out, so I'm going to bend this back. Now this has everything that your enclosure needs. This is now gecko ready. except there's no color in here. So you can add plants for color. I have plants like this. I think these look a little, I think this particular plant looks a little too cheap for what I'm going to do. So I will probably put some nicer plants in here. But if you take something like this and hook it over the edge, you're going to get a look like this. Now, this not looking real is only a problem for me. It's not a problem for the animal. The animal won't care. What the animal will care is, do they have an area to hide in, which they will. So I'm going to leave this in there for now. But you got a nice layer there. If you have plants like this, you can put them into the holes of the cork or wedge them in there. And it's just going to give you a nice bit of layer and texture. Let me move this light forward so you can see. Do you see what I mean about how it adds depth? That's going to be the way to build this out so you enjoy looking at it as much as possible. And if you got the light at front, you're going to see this. And if you put your light on the back, you're going to see this. Now, with a good UV light, it's probably going to look closer to this. That's great. That's going to give your animal what they need. It's going to give them multiple basking spots. And let me move this for a second. Ugh. Now I'm going to pick the camera up so you can see what I mean from the top. See all that depth that we have? See all those layers? This is, remember I showed you where like I go right up near the screen? That's enough space that a gecko will be able to get in there, but not feeders only. Oh, it looks like I got a little silicone on the screen lid. Not a big deal. But that is how you do this stage of the build out. Boom. Now all I need to do for this enclosure is I'm going to put the door back on. I'm going to spray it down a little bit. I'm going to let it sit. I typically, instead of, some people get their substrate wet and then toss it around. I like to spray it down because I don't want a bunch of moisture on the bottom. And you can add whatever you like at this point. Like I said, I don't want to add too much more to the terrain of this enclosure because I want to make sure that it's serviceable. Because if you put too much clutter, as some of us call it, in here, where are you going to put your food bowls? Like if I want a spot for a water bowl or a food bowl, I'm going to put it right here. You can also buy the ones that magnet on the side, but I like surface ones because they don't get flipped. And honestly, if you're feeding Pangea diet to your geckos and you missed a cricket in there, they're going to go eat the diet, and then your gecko is going to eat them full of diet. So yeah, pretty simple. I did this with a really reasonable amount of products cost-wise, but that's going to look way better. Let me move you over here so I can bring this camera in and I can show you. You can see the background. It's going to look way better if you build it out that way. It takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of money, but it's absolutely worth it. I'm going to wipe the sides down in this enclosure with a towel, and then you'll be set. So I'm going to turn this light off so I don't accidentally blind you. I'm going to wipe the sides down, put the door on. And while I do that, I'm happy to field any questions anyone has. One question that I was asked in my DMs about this enclosure is, what is this size enclosure good for? Like this size, what is this size, the smaller of their two? What would I put in here? You could put an adult crested in here for most, if not all of its life. The recommended size for an adult crested is 18 by 18 by 24. This enclosure is obviously thinner than that. It's a 12 instead of an 18. It is 18 deep, and it's not quite 24 high, but it's 22 if I remember correctly. My tape measure is right here. So yeah, the width is 11, so almost 12. The depth is about 17 and a half, so functionally 18. And then the height is 22. So not quite wide enough, but it will work for almost the entirety of your animal's life. So now I'm going to put the door back on. I'm going to keep an eye out for questions. I'm going to bring this in the reptile room where I have great light, and I'm going to bring you all in there with me, and you'll be able to ask any questions you have based on what I've done so far. Like I said, I'll keep an eye on the chat. I'll answer any questions. And this live, again, is much shorter than the beginning one, but I hope that it was still exactly what y'all needed. So I don't remember if I showed them in my last video. I'm 99% sure I did. Pangea sends these gaskets as the washers, but they actually go into your glass to protect the glass from getting bounced into the screen. What am I planning on putting in this enclosure? I am probably going to put a almost fully grown female tokay gecko in here for a little while. I might use it for a crested gecko, but I think based on what I need for enclosure upgrades, I'm going to put a female tokay in there. Well, mister, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm trying to do some longer form. Did I put those on the wrong side? I did. I'm trying to do some longer form reptile live streams on this app. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do longer reptile streams on this app, and I'm going to stick to my social commentary streams on other apps, so that way people that want one type of content from me can get what they want in one spot instead of people. Some people don't want the politics or the social commentary, and that's okay. And some people are freaked out by the reptiles, and that's also okay. So I am going to try and do some more, especially reptile build stuff, longer form here. And also that way I can save them and upload them so people will have access to them in the future. You know, if I'm talking about current events, you don't need to be able to reference that. But this build, I would like it if people are able to reference this in the future, because that won't change, you know? Thank you, Katie. Appreciate you. Mister, yeah, I thought I might have recognized your username. Whoop. By the way, when you drop small pieces, don't move. There's this human urge to chase it. Don't move. Hold still and listen to where it goes, because that's going to be how you actually find the piece. After I get this together, like I said, I'm going to put it under the light. I'm going to put it under one of the big lights in the reptile room. I'm going to show you. Katie, there's no reason not to stream, you know? If you got something to say, get online, stream, say it. I am a firm believer that if you want to make content, make it. And there's going to be somebody that says, oh, well, you know, there's only 200 people to follow me. Can't have 2,000 till you have 200. Can't have 20,000 till you have 2,000, you know? So, what did I do wrong here? I set something wrong when I put this door on. It's not lining up. So let's see what I did wrong. Loosen these up. See if we can't get them to slot. Oh, I see what I did. I see what I did. Got to make a quick adjustment. No big deal. Oh, I like that. I second guessed myself about those washers. I put them in the right spot the first time, and then I corrected to the wrong spot. because I was misgauging how it would hit the door. So I think I lost track because ADHD. I'm going to put this, like I said, I'm going to bring this in there. I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm not going to put a UV light on it just because I don't want to blind y'all in case I hit it with the camera. And then I'm going to show you how the great stuff, how the expanding foam in that other enclosure is already kind of coming into shape. The one bad thing about being a professional reptile keeper is I keep my fingernails so short that when I need to get them into a spot for something, they don't exist. So in the first video, I said that I didn't use the tool to tighten the bolts on because I just wanted to get, like, I wanted everything to match up. When you know you're going to put it together like for good, like when you're there, when you're ready to screw everything together and keep it together, that's when you should tighten it up with the tool. Is it hard for me to travel or go on vacation with reptiles? So one of the nice things about reptiles is they don't need attention every day. So can I go out of town? Yes. Does my wife need to do a few things while I'm out of town? Yes, but nothing too heinous. When I travel, my wife budgets about half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour of work, 2 out of 3 days. So, like, that's not nothing. And she's not keeping up to date on everything, but it's pretty close. Let me bring this into the reptile room, and then I'll come back for you. And then, like I said, we're going to look at the big one. Has she fed Tank before? Oh, yeah, she feeds everything. She has to know how to feed everything because what happens if something goes wrong? So there you go. That's what it's going to look like with proper lighting on it and on your shelf. You're going to have some nice depth. I will probably add some color on the bottom and all the way on the top. But other than that, there you go. Quick, easy build. Complete Pangea PVC tank. And this substrate layer is great. It's got enough depth. You can do bioactive if you want. You certainly don't need to, but I'm very, very happy with that enclosure. This larger one's taken more time because I'm doing the sides. So let me show you that and we'll go from there. So you can see, remember I said those gaps would fill in? Let me grab a flashlight because I cannot shine anything through this because it's a solid side. See, all those gaps that I said would fill in as it expands, they're all filling in. And it will expand a little bit more, but there won't be anything left. And it's right up to the top, right where I wanted it. So what I'm going to do, I appreciate that compliment. Gotcha, Christian. I appreciate that compliment. I'm not going to lie. I learned how to do this from someone who figured it out on his own. I've done a few of these, which helps. But what I did in this build is very attainable. Like, I wanted to do this in a way where anyone that watched the video could do it. I didn't build anything into the expanding foam because you can build stuff into it, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to even consider a water feature, which some people can do, because I wanted this to show what you can do as like a beginner. Like I wanted this to be accessible. One thing you can do at this point that I actually really like doing this at this point. If you want to do a build out like this, let me show you. You can grab yourself a piece of cork like this, and when you get the foam going, you can stick it in there and let it solidify around it. Now, pros to that, easy. Cons, may tilt, may fall. A lot of people, what they'll do at this stage, if they want to mount something like this, they'll then cut into it and they'll stick it in there. A really simple thing you can do at this point, I'm not going to do it with this build, but you can, is you can take like a cup. You can take like a plant cup, like the plastic cup for a plant, and build that right into the wall. And then you can put potted plants in it. So if you ever want to move your potted plants around, you can do them that way. And like I said, you would stick it in the foam at this point, angled towards the top. But this build, I wanted to show exactly how it's going to work. Now, like I said, I'm going to do the covering this in silicone. I'm going to do the covering this in silicone and the substrate off camera. You don't need to see me spend half an hour, whatever it takes me to do that. And then we're going to do the build out of this enclosure in my third video. How much does it cost to build? So once you have the enclosure, what this one took, the back was roughly 1 can of expanding foam, and the side was roughly 1 can of expanding foam. So you got to factor on 2 of those. I would probably buy 3 to build this one out, just in case you need to do a touch up, whatever. Those are roughly $10 a piece. I'm not sure how many silicones I'm gonna need. This is a lot of surface area that I got to cover. But silicones, depending on what you buy, budget $8 to $10. I would guess I'm going to need 5 tubes for this. So that's not nothing. We're at $70 in product to build out what I did. And then you need your vines, your cork bark, your whatever. And after you put the silicone on, you need the bedding. I use a cocoa fiber bedding that looks like this. So it's nice and fine, so it will stick to the silicone. And then you, like I said, you just push it down on the silicone, and it's good to go. So you're adding, like, it's not nothing. You're adding $50 to $100 to your build, each enclosure, if you do them one at a time. If you do a group of enclosures together, especially if they're smaller, well, this enclosure might take 2/3 of a can of insulation, and this one might take 2/3, and you could, excuse me, expanding foam. It's also used for insulation. That's why I said that. But I think it's worth it. I think what you gain aesthetically is worth it. I tell most people for the average size enclosure, you should budget $50 to $60 to do a build out like this. A larger enclosure, double it. Like from the 2 enclosures I did, double it. But it's not horrible. And it's a nice thing you can do to really build out what you're doing in your hobby. Let me move this over so you can see. So you can see that this actually is still squishy, but the top has solidified. So you just kind of got to let this sit. This is another cost, which is why I'm showing you this. Another cost is the space and time. If you don't have a reptile room, which most people don't, do you have an area to sacrifice for a couple days while you build this out? If you're only doing the background, it takes 2 days, because day 1, you get the enclosure built, if it's a buildable enclosure like these are, because these ship to you flat packed. So you build the enclosure, you put the expanding foam on the back. You wait 24 or 48 hours, depending on how much foam you used and how hot and how humid it is, because the warmer and drier it is, the faster the foam dries. Then you cover it in silicone, cover it in substrate. Then you wait another 24 hours. So but that's not like, that's a cost because it takes space and you might have to give up your coffee table or your whatever for a couple days, but it's not too bad. And again, like this is a pretty large enclosure for the average reptile enclosure, like your 12 by 12 by 18s, 18 by 18 by 24s. It's not going to be that much. I will tell you, I recommend anything that is 12 inches or thinner. There's really only 12s and 8s. I would not do the sides because you don't want to lose any width. I would just do the background like I did just the background on that 11 inch. But this one, I'm definitely doing this side, and I'm leaving this side smooth so I can mount anything to it that I want to mount. But yeah, the cost is not prohibitive, and it makes your enclosures look way, way better. So I'm going to wrap this up. If nobody else has any other questions, Christian, you can let Vile know. I do see as we're drying, there are a couple gaps that might last. Like they might not. But if a gap is the size of the tip of your finger, you're just going to put a little silicone in it and then put the bedding over it, and it's not a big deal. Does anyone else have any questions before I wrap this up? I don't want to cut anyone short, but I'm also happy to answer whatever questions you have. I'm going to give it a second or two for those, while I make space for me to get out of the room. Thank you, Katie. Appreciate you. Also, another thing about cost, since you asked, obviously, if you're planning on doing a group of enclosures and you buy in bulk, it's going to be cheaper. Do I have merch? Not yet. Not yet. I am working on merch. Right now I'm wearing Pangea merch because these are Pangea enclosures that they gave me to build. I will have merch probably by the end of the month. I'll definitely have merch by the end of the month. Shh, don't tell anyone. That's our little secret. How many people are in here? I don't know. I'm going to say it anyway. So I'll tell you this. There is That Weird Gecko Gang merch coming because I wanted a gender neutral word. So whether you are guy, gal, alien, something in between, there will be something for you soon. Thank you, mister. I'm going to wrap this up now. I will probably wind up in another live somewhere else soon. But for Reptile streaming now, we're wrapping up. All right, so Trashy's setting up a raid. For those of you, because I saw a couple of people say this is their first stream, my light didn't work. Raids are when there's another streamer that we get along with, that's our friend, our compatriot, our coworker, and we all set up to go jump into their stream. So we're going to hop over into Viles, it looks like. Vile is a friend of ours in streaming, aligns with my politics and my morals, also is a gamer like us. I'm not sure what Vile's streaming, but Christian, did you drop everything for the raid? Follow Christian and we'll be all set. All right, awesome. Thank you so much, y'all. I'm going to take a couple minutes to decompress because I just monologued for a while and that always takes a bit out of me. And I will be back on just to banter